What you have built today is one unit, okay? And meaning you figured out somewhere in there, you're maxing out, I'm making this up, but it sounds like I'll be close, 500 patients a year. You can't do more than that. I want to learn the next level, and the next level is I need 5 of me's, and I want to supervise them. What is involved in 5 of me? And you start scaling, and you say, I'm not going to do anything else for the next 2 years, but find 5 me's.
Tiffani, we are so happy to be with you today here on Leveling Up with Gary and Jill. And for our listeners, we are here with Tiffani Dickerson, who is the CEO and founder of the Breast Choice, which is a lactation consulting business. And I see you have on a wonderful necklace that says Mama, which is a lot of fun. And I'm sure the moms enjoy seeing that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to start this business?
Well, I'm excited to be here. My name is Tiffani Dickerson. I'm a registered nurse and an international board certified lactation consultant. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. I definitely found this way through my own challenges and lived experience into motherhood, as I like to call one of the most humbling experiences I have so far experienced. And just experiencing the challenges and looking for that support and not being able to find it really showed me that there was really a solution to everyone else's pain points that I also experienced. So I launched the Breast Choice Lactation Services to be able to be that solution for those parents looking for lactation support and feeding their babies.
You're living this, but describe briefly what exactly happens with a mother and her newborn that requires someone to help them through launching off into breastfeeding.
Sure, absolutely. So breastfeeding is the most unnatural thing that women can embark on. And a lot of my clients take my class preemptively when they're pregnant so that they have the tool so that when that middle of the night feeding comes or that sleep deprivation hits, they're already equipped and they know what to do. They know how to navigate, how to return back to work. They know how to navigate having that nipple pain. They know how to navigate the nuances of transitioning to solid. So those are some of the services beyond lactation that we're able to support them with.
How does this fit into what I will call the larger concierge medicine movement that we're seeing?
Absolutely. It's right on target with that. So while we do have 3 different options for clients, we have our office space, which I'm at today in DeSoto. Then we also offer telehealth visits. And so with my international board certification, we can support families internationally, anywhere nationwide or countrywide. And so lastly, we have our concierge, as you mentioned, offering, which is limited capacity, where we offer home visits. And so we bring our equipment to you. We come to you in your home, where you and your baby in your comfortable setting, and we provide our services. So if there's a pillow you like to work with, if you want help learning how to breastfeed in your own bed, that's something that you can have with our services.
Is this a one and done thing so that I understand the nervousness and the issues that might surface with baby number 1, but are those issues resolved to a degree that when baby number 2 comes into the family, the need for your services are diminished, or baby 3 or whatever? Is this something that what you do is all your clients are a one-time client, or how does that work?
That's a great question, Gary. Absolutely not. So we like to take our clients on our customer journey is what we call it. And so that means that if we get to you before while you're pregnant, you come to us for your prenatal class. And then within 1 week of having your baby, we set up because we know that there are so many kinks. You're dealing with nipple pain. Maybe you didn't get lactation support in the hospital. Maybe you had a home birth and you didn't have much lactation support at all. So to really help you be most successful and improve our rates of 80% success when you take our class, we support you that first week. And that doesn't end there because a lot of families there's a lot of uncertainty after that first visit. We may be working through, like I mentioned, some challenges of baby latching well, of having pain and discomfort, of making sure and ensuring that the milk that is needed and required is transitioning, that the baby is gaining weight. And so that's like a third visit right there. And then families start to build a rapport with us, right? And so they really start to trust us. And so now they're ready for us to either come back in another 2 weeks or again for whenever they navigate going back to work. So on average, I would say we see clients about 3 to 6 times. And we have a lot of repeat clients. So you mentioned like, okay, when baby 2 or baby 3 comes, does it stop and end there? Oftentimes I have families that had a really easy journey with their first child, but that their second child, depending on how delivery went, may have presented different challenges.
How are you looking at what people term your addressable market? And what is your, kind of what's the sweet spot? And then how are you able to grow into that and to scale?
Absolutely. So right now we're pretty local. We serve a lot of clients in DFW. There's about 65,000 births in Dallas Fort Worth. And so a lot of those moms that you can imagine, they're delivering a new baby, they need our services. So we target expectant and postpartum moms. So in the Dallas Fort Worth area, like I said, there's 65,000 births. Our first year we saw 10 clients. Our second year we had about 300, and this last year we did 583.
What do you attribute that growth to?
I would say it's definitely rapport and a lot of partnerships. So one of the partnerships that we have currently is we just acquired a partnership with United Way, which is I'm really excited about. We also work with the Fort Worth Birth Center, and we did a lot of grassroots work. So we got out in the community. I tend to work with a more holistic minded population. And so the moms that are like, they don't really like to give their baby medicines or vaccines. Those are kind of the clients that finding themselves to me. So I collaborate with a lot of midwives because that's in that realm of that space. And a lot of what we would call birth coaches or doulas. And so those are practitioners that support the families during birth. So a lot of them will reach out to me and ask for me to teach breastfeeding classes. And then that's an instant funnel for them to come in and funnel in as clients.
So back to this scaling question that Jill said.
Mhm.
So is there a way, have you learned of a way to scale up to get larger more rapidly? I mean, what are the gating issues instead of going from 200 to 580, go from 580 to, I'm making these numbers up, of course, but let's say your goal is to get to 2 to 3,000 in the next year. What would you have to be able to do in order to do that?
Well, we're going to need some more of me, that's for sure. So one of the challenges with the scaling is that it is a service-based industry, right? And so we know that that is one of the barriers, but it's going to take hiring additional lactation consultants, and the scarcity does seem like it could be problematic. However, I'm happy to report that recently, after placing some ads on Indeed, I have received a couple of candidates that I'm going to be interviewing so that we can get some additional lactation consultants onboarded under the brand. Now, if a sole practitioner, I saw 500 people, which is pretty impressive, I think. Imagine if we have another one of me and then another one of me. So if we had 3 of me is really my goal. I feel like that's kind of where I would like to grow over these next couple of months. Get one more onboarded and then an additional one. That's in a potential for 1,500 if I'm still seeing clients. But my goal is as they start to see more, I'm slowly pulling back into more of the CEO role. And then I'm able to launch on our second opportunities for scaling, which will be digital courses.
Talk a little about that.
Yeah, so I would love to launch a training platform for a twofold. So for families that are navigating back to work, maybe they don't have the time to really like come into the office or even for us to come into their home because now they're back at work. So we have some self-led coursework for them that would also be followed up with a virtual visit because that's going to meet their need. They can hop on a virtual visit, telehealth during their lunch break. And so that also is a lower overhead cost for us. And then the second fold of that would be for aspiring lactation consultants. A lot of professionals and some of my colleagues, they see the work that I'm doing. They see how fast my business has grown and they seek out for coaching opportunities. And so the second one would be a higher end coaching platform.
On the business side, I'm assuming, and I'd like you to talk about that in a second, we always talk about unit
Sure.
economics. And what that means is tell us what one, how much revenue can you get from one client, or and how
Mhm.
much flows to the bottom line? Because I'm sitting here, you talked about there just aren't a lot of me's out there, and I need a lot of me's if I'm going to
Mhm.
scale. So I can't help myself but think that, boy, wouldn't it be great if you could develop a course, an accredited course,
Mhm.
and teach people how to become lactation experts and have them join your organization. And so you literally vertically integrate, if you would, from the teaching to the certification to
Mhm.
having new people who are able to join your organization as a way to cover more ground. Is that, am I missing something that says that couldn't happen? Or, I mean, and I understand money's an object and we'll get around to that. But if you had funds to do that, is that something that would result in potentially a lot more lactation specialists and therefore more business?
Absolutely, Gary. You're right in the money. So that's right in line with my vision of that training course. So it would be the digital courses for the families. And as you mentioned, mentorship opportunities to bring them on board so that let's say we teach them, we train them, we onboard them. Now they're going to be able to work for us. So I'll allow us to continue to scale. And then there's also maybe not, I'm thinking this untouched turf of other aspiring lactation consultants that already have their practice, but it's just not really doing what they would love for it to do. And they're looking for some business coaching in the lactation space because our space is so niche. There's so many different insurance barriers that we have. There's credentialing barriers that we have. And why not learn that from someone that's already overcome
So
those?
when you mentioned the credentialing barrier, so say I'm an RN, what's to stop me from saying
Mhm.
that among the things that I do, and I'm an RN who does home
Mhm.
health visits for all kinds of things. What's
Mhm.
there to stop me from adding lactation consultant into the bag of services that I already offer?
Well, you definitely have an easier pathway. There are 3 different pathways to become a lactation consultant. The first one, as you mentioned, is already being a registered nurse or an occupational therapist, physical therapist, something in the medical space realm, right? You already have a degree of some level of expertise in that. And then the second way is actually having to go and attend like a university. And then the last one is a mentorship where you need 1,000 hours with someone like myself, kind of how you mentioned, Gary, of onboarding them. So you need 1,000 hours, and then you also have to sit for the exam.
Yeah, because what I'm getting to is a couple of things. One, barriers to entry, so that you have something
Mhm.
novel to push forward into the marketplace. And two, barriers to your own scale, where if you can't find enough
Mhm.
people quickly enough who can fill the pipeline of need, that you've got some built-in kind of structural constraints. So that's the reason for this. But I'm curious, is the business doing what
Mhm.
you want it to do now? If it didn't change an iota, is this the business that you wanted it to be? Or do you have designs on it evolving and growing into something more?
I would love to see it grow, Jill, and become even more. I would love to see us be able to bring in some passive income. I would love to bring additional lactation consultants on board. It really doesn't end here. I could even see the breast choice lactation being in other states. And so, what if we were able to licensure or franchise it out where it's available in other states, and people don't have to start it from startup? They already can just come under our brand, start their practice. They have our scope of practices, they have our EMR system, they have access to all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about these businesses that I'm learning about on these podcasts, and they're fascinating, I always default to, gee, how can we make this intergalactic? So it was really funny. I'm thinking about how can you rule the world in this space when Jill said the right question, which is to see if we
Mhm.
could nail you down aspirationally. What do you want to do? Because sometimes there's a mismatch when someone we speak to really does want to take over the world, but they don't. The CEO's job is knocking down barriers, and you've thrown a couple of barriers out there
Absolutely.
that have slowed you down.
And that's why I'm here. I'm here for solutions and I'm here for a different set of ears and eyes on this to think of things out of the box. Because if you put this particular niche kind of organization and company in this business model that everyone else wants to, it's going to be so much more challenging, I feel like, to think outside of the box and to help it to grow and to scale. It's going to have to be something that is not traditional at all.
Oh,
So I'm very open to that, which is why I'm here.
now we're talking. So, first order of business is you have to think about what you're commanding. What you're commanding is the demographic that drives over 80% of all buying decisions and probably higher than that with respect to healthcare decisions. You are also interfacing with the demographic that is moving more into consumers. If you have a baby, you need a lot of things. And so you've got so many adjacencies, and you are creating that very interesting client base. Some of your materials, you talk about how you are increasing the health and well-being of babies, mothers, and moving them forward. Those have interfaces with a lot of initiatives that are very important and very present day. And so really thinking more broadly about that, including access to healthcare and the movement
Mhm.
toward physicians, assistants, and other types of medical professionals, and trying to train them to really increase the access that you have to healthcare writ large. And so you are tip of the spear of getting into an entire family and their health and well-being. And there are so many programs, initiatives, et cetera, not to mention people who want to go into a field where they feel both a sense of meaning and a sense of autonomy. And your ability to, what we know about the human body is it is not different by virtue of where you live. We have all the same mechanics, meaning that you do have something scalable, minimally across the country, but in other ways. And the ability to do something that helps reach remote populaces is so very important. So you have come upon something that I think thinking bigger, tip of the spear, and the importance of the demographic that you are reaching, then that helps you think more broadly about now what should I be doing with that?
Yeah. And I might invite you to think about growth in the following way. I'm sitting here thinking, because I'm going, again, know zero about any of this, but I get excited about thinking about it for you. And here's what I think you've accomplished without knowing it. What you have built today is one unit, okay? And meaning you figured out somewhere in there, you're maxing out. I'm making this up, but it sounds like I'll be close. 500 patients a year. You can't do more than that. That would be you need to decide how many is one person, fills up one person. You have spent the last 2 or 3 years learning everything there is to know about developing a one person model. It'll end up having this many patients. You're going to have this array of issues. You're going to have these kinds of issues with financing it, with people, the various ways that people pay, all those sorts of things. And what you know, and I know this part of what I'm saying, Tiffani. What you know is the most important thing anyone can know about starting a business. You understand what it is you're trying to do because you have done it. So now you want to graduate yourself to say, you know what, I want to learn the next level. And the next level is I need 5 of me's and I want to supervise them. What is involved in 5 of me? And you start scaling. That's how I was looking for, how do you scale? and you say, I'm not going to do anything else for the next 2 years, but find 5 me's. And I'm going to coach them. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to learn what are all the issues that they have. And your job will be knocking down their barriers for them so they can build their own businesses. I would also think, again, without knowing, that you ought to spend some time thinking about pricing, that a new mom, first mom, has one price list. Second, I would believe that a second or third mom has a lower price list because they're coming to you with an issue. Something popped up they didn't learn on their first child, and they need help. Well, to keep them, you might price differently as they go through their family life cycle. And so no one will ever beat you if you continue to learn what it takes at each step, because you're going to learn something that unless the next person or a competitor has learned it the hard way like you did, they're not going to know about it. So that for me is how you think about scaling. Don't think about one. Your one is bigger. Your one is a whole business unit, and you are the business unit. And so you're looking to grow that.
Yeah, and I heard something else, and it's when you talked about passive income, because you realize that this takes a real physical toll. And for you or all those in your profession, you have to physically be there. Like we got to see during COVID that was not remote work. People were physically involved. And so I don't want to miss that. The other thing that I'm seeing as a trend in healthcare, and particularly women's healthcare, is what I would call wellness journeys, in that it's amazing to me the number of OB-GYN professionals that have moved into, and particularly the women who have moved into more of a wellness or a holistic space rather than just straight ahead, I'm doing gynecology and obstetrics. And so I have to think that wellness as that next piece, again, tip of the spear, you get the mom, you get the child, you get, the additional children, but that wellness piece, you have them as captive for that. They trust you with their health. They want to make sure that they are producing healthy milk and later producing healthy children, and then kind of getting their body and their energy and their calibration back for moving forward with their lives postpartum and beyond. And so I'm thinking that you're onto a piece of that as well. So how will you create those things where you're able to earn, and those that you train in this space to make it an attractive franchise, if you will, those that you train in this space, how are they able to then pick up some of that passive piece of it? And wellness could be one of those places. Coursework could be the same, just kind of looking at those various platforms that you have the permission to get involved with by virtue of what you've created here.
You are on the right path, Tiffani, and too seldom do I see entrepreneurs who haven't really gotten dirty in their business in their early days to understand their business. You have, and you've got an innate sense of an adjacency. All businesses have adjacencies, and you've been talking about, another way to say that is a journey.
Creating a real business. Some people have a vision, but haven't really created the business. You understand the service innately, and now you're just kind of really thinking about scale, growth, and journey. So you are absolutely on the right track. One of the things that you might want to think about just as a takeaway as we begin to wrap our time together is, do you need some lively companions on the journey? And by that, I mean sort of an advisory board, not even going all the way to the level of board members, but are there people who are in some of these adjacencies that can open some doors, make some introductions, keep you focused and encouraged as you're doing the scaling and growing and looking for interesting opportunities as you move along the way? I still think there are probably programs around, rural care, urban care, a host of things that you can be looking to, where you're really feeding into something that is a demonstrated problem that you already have the infrastructure to be able to solve as part of your growth.
And I know we haven't talked about funding, and I know you're out trying to raise money right now. I think that's that's a whole other area that you have to learn. And if you're to do this, you will learn it. If I were you, I would start with potential investors who are in the healthcare space or home healthcare space or the childhood development space or anything that's peripheral to what you're doing. I think they will be the easiest / most likely sorts of investors because they will understand what it is that you're doing, and they will understand something really important people are going to start asking you trying to raise money is just use of funds. Everyone wants to know, investors want to know, if I give you money, how are you going to spend it? And what is it that you would buy with my investment? What is it going to do for you? How's it going to enable you to do something that you couldn't have done without it? You need to be really ready for that.
If you really have a business plan that you think you can bank, utilizing your own credit is the surest way toward getting some working capital in place. So if you're able to look at that, people often are trying to find investors who just kind of give them capital to go off and, kind of launch this thing, this dream, that is non-recourse. But if you really believe that you've got something that you can make happen, you just need some working capital to get that fueled, and you've done the math to know how you pay that back, that is the easiest direction to go and get capital for your business.
Yeah, Jill, I think you make a really solid point. It's that research phase, right? Because I need to make sure that if I have this long-term goal of this wellness space, that that's going to make the money back that it takes to invest. And so that's where the guidance really is going to come into play. So I really love that you mentioned the advisory board and that you mentioned, getting with the personal banker and having them review some of this for me, letting me know what my payments would look like, and I have been blessed. The business has been blessed to receive some, grants here and there, which has been phenomenal for us, right? So I think with the right initiative and pitched to a way that it really shows how impactful this can be, not only for, yes, the business and growth and scaling, but also for the community impact and for women's health, I think that I will find the right angel investor is my goal.
And it's interesting because I want to peel that back a little bit. When you say angel investor, that says, okay, I want somebody to fund what I'm doing. And you've got to know, how do they get that money back? Because they really aren't angels in that way of from heaven giving you a blessing. That sounded to me like you're looking for somebody with, $500,000 that can just make all your problems go away, and it's an endless bank. And it's not.
Yeah.
Are there clinics or public health sorts of institutions that would give you a contract that you can now say, all right, I know that my revenue is set at X based on performance of this contract for a period of time, because that helps you with an investor, that helps you with a bank, and that just helps you with your cash flow. You definitely have to scale something because you going out, think about like a staffing agency model. So you never make as much in your take home as you end up having to charge a client, because you've got to have, some for the employee and some for the business. So you've got to figure out where that calibration is too. And is it something that actually spins off enough? Again, we've talked about scale over and over again, but is it something that actually spins off enough to attract an investment capital? And there are businesses that just don't, because if they are too tight on the margin of a given human, to Gary's point on the unit one, if it's too tight on that margin, you don't have a financeable business. What you have is a job you've created for yourself.
So sounds like a thin line there, Jill. So what are some ways that we can ensure as we continue to grow and scale that we are not just a job, but we actually are a business?
Yeah, you've got to figure out your margin. You've got to figure out your margins and then your possibilities. You kind of gave us the straw man of the 1 to 500. There's 365 days in a year, and if you're seeing a couple patients a day, during most of those, maybe 500 is a small number for that. I don't know, what average visit numbers are, but you're going to have to create a prototype that says at scale, and it doesn't have to be the scale you have today. It's the scale you can get to. At scale, I am throwing off X amount. And it looks at business model at scale for a business model that is now somewhat elevated from individual service provider / staffing company. Well, it is now wellness company that maybe has product, other services, things through that. These partnerships, advertising. Some of that was what I was sort of hinting to when I talked about you're collecting a very important market in this work that you're doing. Or what does that mean? And then how do you monetize that in ways that are exponentially larger than fee for service?
Gary, you
No,
look
I'm
like you're about
just,
to say something.
you are, I'm enjoying watching this because you are clearly an entrepreneur. You've clearly created something that's got value and it's filling you up. And that's hard to find both things. And you've also, I think you don't know how much you have learned. And I don't think you appreciate the fact that having built this brick by brick, you know something about this business that competitors won't. And
Yes.
you'll know how to grow it correctly. And this whole unit economics thing, what Jill said, I mean, I'm sitting here like this because she said the obvious thing. How many days a year, do you work? There's 365 in a year, but there's 250 that you work. And if you have 500 sessions, they don't work out smoothly, but 2 a day doesn't feel to me like a full day. Now, if it's a rural thing or you're going to you need to sort that out. But I think you've got the pieces to be able to put together a game plan, and you must have the contacts that could lead you to a couple of people who could become interested, especially you're a salesperson, by the way, you're pretty darn good at it. You could probably convince a couple of folks who you believe could be good at this to pivot in their own careers.
Exactly.
And
People are looking
you
for
are a
that.
Pied Piper. I think that you could create a merry band of lactation specialists that want to follow you because of your background, your personality, and your results and your knowledge to help them build their careers. And that's what business is all about. And you don't have to call it a business, but you're creating a business there. And I get excited when I see people that are where you are in your journey, and it appears to me that you can be and do whatever you want to do on this journey.
Yeah. It's so many directions it can go. I even think about corporate wellness and initiatives for them to increase their retention rates and launching like some kind of curriculum for them and licensing that out to more of the spaces like companies, Google, IBM are the ones I think of immediately that are very, very maternal heavy, and they're very supportive of the women re-entering the workspace and retaining them and keeping them happy, and creating wellness spaces, ensuring that they have a room that is up to par with the latest Pump Act. So there's so many different ways this can go. So I just was trying to put that under the training umbrella.
Yeah, and I think
essentially.
that creation of a training platform, now you have a whole curriculum that you could go to, online vocational universities and say, for X price, I got you another product.
And Jill and Tiffany, I think this is the time when we usually wrap up these sessions. And what we like to do, Tiffany, is kind of go around the table and talk about what we learned today. coming from your perspective and then from each of our perspectives is a way to wrap this up. And what we hope the listener has taken away as something that can be important to them on their journey, because that's really our hope for this podcast. So why don't we start with you, Tiffani, and what are the things that you are thinking about the most based on this session?
I feel like just knowing that I am on the right course and thinking of this in a non-traditional space and way, and really getting someone on board so that I can work on the training platform, which will be a pivotal moment for the business.
Terrific. Jill.
My takeaway is very similar. You have established a very interesting platform, and I think you've got some thinking to do around how to best move on your journey. But listen to that little back of your head voice, which says, I need something passive, meaning where I'm earning money and I'm not having to physically be there every moment.
Yeah,
And
thank you, Jill.
and I think for me, it just underscores the points that no matter what you want to do or are trying to do, you need to understand what it would mean in whatever it is you're doing to scale up, to get bigger. What are the key things you would have to do is kind of the one big point. The second big point is understanding the power of the adjacencies of building relationships with people who are doing things that could also be of interest to your client base as a way to grow the business. And then third, building an organization of people that you can find, that you believe you can grow, and then you form a bond with and trust so that they can become your eyes and ears and become a copy of you delivering what you teach them to deliver is a key in any business.
Thank you, Gary. Very insightful.
Well, thanks. This has been Leveling Up with Gary and Jill, and thank you, Tiffani.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Leveling Up with Gary and Jill. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. For more inspiring stories and breakthrough moments, visit GaryandJillPodcast.com. See you next episode.